This is a guide to picking your main troop type in Rise of Kingdoms. Selecting your main troop type in Rise of Kingdoms is a pretty major decision, and while you aren't necessarily locked to just that troop type in the future, it definitely decides most of your trades because of your special unit and because of your playstyle. So in today's video, we're going to be covering each of the main troop types, where they tend to excel, what their typical playstyle tends to be, and when you should choose them, and even cover some things that you might want to consider when you're picking these as your main troop type. Without further ado, let's get started. First, I wanted to cover some things to remember as we go through this. The first thing is aptitude is not destiny. Even if your troop type excels in a particular area, it doesn't mean that that's the one thing you need to limit yourself to. For example, if your special unit is Cavalry and they excel in field, that doesn't mean you have to be limited to field. You still have rally options and you still have garrison options. And because that, as the next point goes in, the meta is very broad, and each troop type at least has a toe in every specialty role. So even if you're not a slam dunk cav rally right now, like there are archers or infantry, you still have options. The balance of troop type also means the meta will shift all the time. While cav will generally counter archers who counter infantry who counter cav, the meta will shift. So even if there's an area where one is excelling, every troop type has its moment to shine in each role as it counters that previous generation. Ultimately, the choice is yours. The playstyle you enjoy is what you should look for over the actual aptitude in general, because as the meta will shift, you'll see a shift in where each troop type may be dominant in. First, let's talk Cavalry. So Cavalry is my personal favorite unit, and really the key excelling feature for Cavalry is their mobility. Even the garrisons to some extent have some kind of move speed, and their ability to get around the battlefield is what makes them special for the field specifically. Whether you're trying to flank an enemy, escape, or even cut off reinforcements, Cavalry is typically the unit that's going to do that. Their key typical weakness, though, is sustain, as they do put out a lot of good burst damage, think Nevsky or Joan. In the sustained fighting, especially if there's infantry involved, there's just not as good of a trade. Historically speaking, they've been dominant in the field, and that tends to be the area where they're best because their mobility can be brought to bear there. So having that mobility in a garrison really doesn't help you besides getting to the garrison. For top current commanders, Nevsky, Joan Prime, Huo, Eleanor, Jan, and Justinian are the biggest ones for each of the main facets of the game, where they're talking about field, garrison, or rally respectively. You should choose Cavalry if you're looking for mobility or trying new tactics, or you're into positioning over raw damage output or the tankiness that other troop types give. If you are going to be a Cavalry main, the three main civilizations you want to go with are Arabia, Germany, or the Byzantines. Arabia is great for rallies, Germany tends to be great for training more troops and good solid units, and Byzantines are particularly good for the field because of the increased hospital capacity. All three are good, but that's generally the order in which you'll want to prioritize them. Next, we are on to infantry. Infantry is probably one of the more popular troop types to main, and it's not hard to see why. The key excelling feature they have is tankiness and the ability to resist damage. So whether you're in a garrison, you're at the head of a rally, whether you're being swarmed in the field, that tends to be a nice, steady level that doesn't have a lot of ups, but don't necessarily have a lot of downs either. So because of that, it's one of the most consistent troop types in the game. Their most typical weakness is mobility and lower damage output versus other troop types, but certain commanders tend to excel at that over others. Generally speaking, garrisons tend to be the area where infantry shines most, but as you can tell now in the current meta with Scipio Aemilianus, and even with William Wallace in the field, there are a lot of options that are field and rally viable, but garrisons tend to be where they shine most, just like Gorgo does right now. For current commanders, Gorgo of course is the biggest one, Scipio Aemilianus is a big rally, William Wallace is a big field player, Tariq is also good for rallies, and Liu Che is a very popular option as well. You'll also see the likes of Constantine sneaking in once in a while to go with Gorgo as an option, but overall, those are the big main players. You should choose infantry if you're wanting to have great swarm resistance, survivability, and durability. Even if the damage isn't necessarily top notch, if you're looking for consistency, it's hard to go wrong with infantry. For top civilizations, France is by far the most popular that I've seen, and it's one that I would recommend for most field players. Greece is another popular option, as are the Vikings, who you want to use if you want to resist swarm because of the counterattack damage. But all three are great options. France tend to be the most popular. Greece is a very popular option as well. And for those who just really don't like being swarmed, go with the Vikings. And last of the main troop types, we have archers. Archers are very unique and they're very niche. And the players who love to play archers love to play archers. The key excelling feature for archers are damage outputs. They can put out a ton of damage, whether it's single target, AoE. They tend to have the highest damage output of any commander. And on the other side of that, as a balancing point, the typical weakness tends to be their tankiness and their resistance to swarm. And this is most evident in the Garrison meta. Even now with CY, swarm resistance is a hard thing to come by when it comes to archers, and it shows. But the damage output can be very rewarding if you have the patience and the positioning to make use of it. Generally speaking, rallies tend to be the area where archers are the most popular for the longest. You could think of Asher, YSG, even as a garrison, has a huge rally shelf life. Henry, pretty much anybody that is a major meta player for archers has been rally. Even Liang, who has a lot of field use, is also doubling as rally. For top current commanders, I've mentioned a lot of them. Asher is a big one, Liang, CY, YSG, Herman Prime. You could even say Shajar if you do not want to go for something that's more damage output. She is more of a support option, but she still, even then, does a significant amount of damage for the fact that she's very support heavy. You should choose archers if you like to put out a lot of raw damage and optimize for dealing as much damage to the enemy as possible, particularly in groups, and if you have very solid fundamental positioning. Archers can be a perfect troop type for you to main. For civilizations, the Ottomans is the most popular for rallies because of the rally damage. Egypt, Britain are also options. Britain, I typically recommend for trading only. And for Ottomans, it's the skill damage, not the rally damage. Ottomans have 5% skill damage, which is super useful, and it's super popular no matter what role you're playing in. So that tends to be far and away the most popular. There are a lot of players who play Egypt. And for Britain, I really only recommend for off-season to train additional troops. And that's only if you have those extra civilization changes to both change to and to change away from archers. Lastly, I wanted to cover just how effective this overall counter is and how each of the play styles of these main troops fit perfectly and how they counter each other. So that's a big part of what I think makes Rise of Kingdoms special, is that each of the typical play styles of those troop types tend to fit what they counter and what are countered by them. So, for example, if you are a cavalry main, the mobility is the big appeal of being a cavalry main. But for infantry, their sheer tankiness means the mobility and the burst damage doesn't really do as much as their sustained steady damage. So not only do infantry counter cavalry by stats, by playstyle, that same thing counteracts. And while cavalry may be able to get away with their mobility, they're not going to outdamage the infantry. Meanwhile, the archer's sheer damage output is able to get past the tankiness of the infantry, and due to the fact that the infantry do not have high mobility, they're not able to escape the archers, which makes the archers more able to counter the infantry. And then as we come full circle, the mobility of the cavalry makes them able to chase down and burst damage archers before they're able to put out their high level of sustained damage, allowing you to counter them. And then the circle starts all over again with infantry. So the playstyles themselves actually fit very well into how the troop types are supposed to counter each other already. So it makes for a very unique experience that means even if you play archers, you're going to counter the infantry mains, and you're going to be countered by the cavalry mains. And that keeps the game fresh and moving even as the meta shifts. But with that, we'll wrap up our video on choosing a troop type main. I hope it helps you ease the process of deciding what troop type you want to main. And even if you think you picked the wrong one from the get-go, you can always make the change now, so keep that in mind. But let me know what you think. What's your favorite troop type and why? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see me cover a different topic, also let me know down there as well, because it does often become future video topics, as this one has from a Discord suggestion by RG. So, let me know what you think down in the comments. Join the Discord using the link in the description to suggest content there. And as always, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield.